22. Nada, no me ha llegado ni no sé si salió negativo o positivo.
רגע, לא יכול להיות. רגע.
자지들의 들이들은 애들이 비춰서 워서네들이 따로 고쳐놓은 것도 대양들이 저도 집안들이 산지가 땜바는 보지 멍지리 견인들이 들이 견주바 이한성네요 내가 산지가 땜바 아선 들이들이 하자다 아침 보리 들이대회 상황으로니 애들이 이게 로마 또 매들이 다 자작가를 저거 참아나 일다시 대략들이 가다 뭐 이제 정말 다시 대략 끝에 있는데 이제 공부들이 뭐는 저거
So in Buddha's Estashitele, everyone, we're celebrating today the 10th So that's why the center is extremely precious. And so first I would like to say Dashidele to all of the Israeli disciples mainly, but then also everybody else who joined on the live stream. And I'm offering you this Dashidele Kadag. And I pray for your long life and the successful accomplishment of all your activities.
Buenas tardes, dice Rinpoche Tashidele. Vamos a leer las oraciones en el libro amarillo, página 1.
All Mother sentient beings, limitless as space, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience. May they experience happiness, be free from suffering, and swiftly may they attain precious, unsurpassed, perfectly complete enlightenment. All Mother sentient beings, limitless in space, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience. May they experience happiness, be free from suffering, and swiftly may they attain precious, unsurpassed, perfectly complete enlightenment. For that purpose, until I attain Buddhahood, I will apply my body, speech, and mind to virtue. Until death, I will apply my body, speech, and mind to virtue. From today until this time tomorrow, I will apply my body, speech, and mind to virtue. The mandala offering on page 7.
Ofrenda de mandala, página 7.
Ram jan jan so shen gen yor pe so ma le lo ye long de ber la na de nian zhou gong tu jie zong de so da le long jun dou hua jin qi dang Hong Gan Jin Jin Ta Yun De Ma Ji Da De Zong We Mu Bo Chur Se Gun Ber Jie Dan Zhen Xie War Sen Jie Lo Nge Dan Nge Me Jengane Somdong Takji Min Sin Den Den Lo Men Ranjo Perver Sanji Topar
An infinite array of worlds, each with 4 continents and the wealth of infinite oceans of realms, if I bring them all to mind and offer them without exception, please hold with compassion all the beings they contain. My body, enjoyments, whatever I own, my aggregates, elements, and sense sources, my aspirations now and in times to come, as well as everything I grasp as mine. By offering them all, may I be blessed with the end of self-grasping. Completely liberated from the bounds of real and unreal, transcending the names and concepts of arising, cessation, and abiding, coming and going, affirmation and denial, the supreme mandala is the natural state. By offering it, may I be blessed to attain the state of Buddhahood.
Om Guru Deva Rajana Mandala Padisa
Requesting teachings on page 10.
Solicitud de enseñanzas, página 10.
Please turn the wheel of the Dharma of the greater and lesser vehicles and the teachings common to both according to the dispositions and mental capacities of sentient beings.
Bueno, aquí mientras les acabo de traducir el principio, porque empezamos luego con las plegarias. Bienvenidos, esta es una traducción de Amigos Drikung. Yo soy Leonardo Álvarez. Al principio empezó Rinpoche por dar la bienvenida y aclarar que estamos celebrando el 10º aniversario del centro Drikung en Israel. Es una ocasión muy especial.
내가 핑핑 자는 다 속들이 동네에 저런 저런 코 살아들이 다 대외들은 코 시반들이 감성 코아니 들이 제습지 담게 섭들씩 뭐 사제가 저요 참 내가 끼는 저들이 따로와를 소소를 하는 동안 어떤 용서 대외는 제가 민주법 강해야 되는 There just a show like a Sancho Sampa somebody drove it down me words. There were some change on one. The Bani, la Costa Jetty, simply roar, chocolate simply coming by the meat to shake the mayor, the meat to shake it, not that our it, Maruba it. There meat to shake, there is such a me. 임축시키지 상제지. 그래서 상제가 되니 내가 얼마나 토리성을 대야 타와나 타톡들이 랑 사제 공방 탐네. 그니 생기 탐지 좋다봐. 그래서 좋네 좋을 라면 또 먼저 대치 랑지 개눈 봐서지 개눈이 또 봐라 되셔. 좋은데 좋을 라면 또 먼저 랑 동네를 저 탑에 하고는 그때 이는 저 롱동도 봤을 때 봐봐 견디니 강은 애들 때 추소를 좀 거리 추소도 사실자리 Dari di nga kiba ngapsa sunam ki namche sunam ka saung te ta dari le na dari di ne ramji ke de samba tan ji ke dobla ti ni de ramji ke de ro nam ram zong sa ji sho de di ne de che di ne ramji ke de sa chok chen ba ji mo ro le se ji ji na sem ka ka le zok te ba na ro ro zok kang ji na zok te ba sem ka ka le sem kaka kare semla roar do saki tamaba kashe tamaba de gamre de danji shechen de nyumo ba shokche so diwang de shosong de tamaba chi de nang samding de shokche so de der lato de sharpa mek no le de hako yo hafta de le de from mek de top de ju mek top le de rang tron yin tron lam to so ba 게디야 미래 사기야 미래 수진도 미래 로아도 소소서 타마 얘네들이 세무 가까이 데이터를 주는 데이터들이 주소시 와도 게디가 막 초과래 이제 하던 가서 뭐래 그때로 토마토를 다시 때려 저 돈들이
So today, Dharma friends, we're having the 10-year anniversary of the Dharma Center. And so what are we doing on this day? There is an important activity that we have to accomplish. And so what is the important activity? What's important is that we bring about the temporary benefit and the ultimate happiness. Meaning that we might find some temporary, short-lived benefits in this life, but then ultimately, often these worldly benefits that we gain become the cause of suffering, because they are samsaric activities. So samsara consists of the 3 realms of samsara. And within samsara, the sentient beings, the basis of their mind is Buddha nature. So they all possess the cause of Buddhahood. And only temporarily, due to various conditions, the 6 realms of samsara manifest to them. And they have the perceptions of their various abodes in the 6 realms and experience the corresponding suffering there. Shantideva said in the Bodhicharyavatara that the only medicine for sentient beings and the source of all happiness, benefit and happiness, is only the Buddha's teachings, and therefore may it endure for a long time. And so the sentient beings in the 6 realms of samsara experience suffering. And the suffering is just like a disease, like a sickness, an unbearable sickness that needs to be treated. And the physician, the doctor which treats it, is the Buddha. And so the Buddha gave the medicine of the Dharma, whereby beings can find the temporary happiness of birth in the higher realms, and then the ultimate happiness of attaining enlightenment. And then once one has attained that state, one is able to liberate many other sentient beings. So in a praise to the Sangha, we say that the Sangha is someone who themselves has become liberated from suffering, and therefore is able to show the path to liberation also to others. So the Sangha is someone who knows the method to become liberated from suffering and can therefore show it to others. That's what we call a noble Sangha. And so where does the noble Sangha dwell? The noble Sangha comes from the Dharma centers. And the Dharma center is like a field where you can plant the seed, and then people with great merit, and those seeds of merit from previous lives come to the Dharma center. They come really through the power of love and compassion. And then through that power of coming to the center, then gradually, they naturally arise as bodhisattvas, because it is said that the Buddhas emerge spontaneously out of sentient beings. So they become bodhisattvas. So actually, in terms of being people, those bodhisattvas, they look the same. They are people just like us, but their mind is different. So even though they may appear as in the same form as the 6 kinds of beings in 6 realms of samsara, their mind is different. And so how is it different? Now, an ordinary sentient being, what's an ordinary sentient being? So that is someone whose self-grasping is very strong and who become controlled by the afflictive emotions that arise from out of that self-grasping. So that is what we call an ordinary being. And then what distinguishes the great beings from these ordinary beings is that they have a greater love and compassion. And because of that, they possess wisdom that knows what to do and what not to do. So they have found the eyes that see karma, cause and effect, and past and future lives. They have received the eyes of the Dharma, and that is why they are able to help others become liberated. So in terms of being people, they are just like us. As Sangha is a person, also the Buddha is a person, and we are all of us are people, or the other 6 kinds of beings. But then there's a difference in the mind. And so in any case, the Dharma Center is such a foundation of this community of the Sangha. And that is why it is so precious. And not the reason for me sending you this Dashi Telex is because of that, because we are extremely fortunate.
Bueno, aquí dice Rinpoche que hoy estamos celebrando el 10º aniversario de un centro de Dharma y lo que hacemos hoy es una actividad muy importante. Es traer el beneficio temporal y la felicidad útil. Al final, los beneficios temporales vienen a cambio de sufrimiento en el samsara. El samsara, que tiene los 3 reinos, la base de todos los seres es la naturaleza búdica. Por causas temporales se manifiestan los 6 diferentes reinos del samsara y se experimenta el sufrimiento típico de cada reino. Shantideva dice que la única medicina a este sufrimiento son las enseñanzas del Buda. Entonces los seres sintientes experimentan el sufrimiento como una enfermedad intolerante. El Buda dio la medicina para curar esta enfermedad. Por medio de esta medicina, uno adquiere renacimiento en reinos superiores primero y luego se libera finalmente del samsara. La sangha es alguien que conoce el método para liberarse. Conoce el método para liberarse del sufrimiento y aparte se los enseña a otros. La noble sangha es donde se puede plantar la semilla del Dharma. Viene a la sangha la gente por el poder del amor y la compasión y naturalmente crecen y se vuelven bodhisattvas. Los budas emergen de los seres sintientes, entonces. Los bodhisattvas son personas como nosotros, pero su mente es diferente. Un ser sintiente ordinario es alguien que tiene un apego al yo muy fuerte y por esto tiene las emociones aflictivas. Lo que diferencia a los bodhisattvas es la sabiduría que tienen y la compasión. Y por esta misma sabiduría y compasión saben qué hacer y cómo ayudar a los otros a liberarse del samsara. Entonces el centro de Dharma es la base de la comunidad de este sangha. Somos muy afortunados de hoy estar celebrando este 10º aniversario de este centro.
certain prayer which was mentioned before said that no, may the Buddha's teachings, the only source of benefit and happiness, endure for a long time, and may it be upheld and endure for a long time. So it is that people come to such a place through the power of previous karma, and even though they look like people, there are some people who possess great wisdom, who possess the wisdom of knowing what to do and what not to do. And that wisdom is actually their merit. And often there's a certain place where there's kind of a collective wisdom or collective merit coming together. So all the activities, the Dharma activities and so forth we engage in are really Buddha's activities. It is said that everything that is done in the field of knowable things, which is the world, is done by the Buddha. So even though everything that's done is done by the Buddha, people have different levels of wisdom. So what we call Buddha is actually our wisdom mind. But we have different levels of wisdom. For example, there are some who are selfish, who care more about themselves, and so their quality of wisdom is much smaller. It is obscured by self-grasping. They consider the self as more important than others. And then there's others who consider others as more important, who have an altruistic mind, and their wisdom is much greater. And that is the wisdom that develops in the omniscient wisdom of the Buddha. And so what does the omniscient wisdom of the Buddha have in mind? It is only sentient beings, all mother sentient beings. And they understand that all these mother sentient beings are actually not separate from my own mind. But in the very beginning, when the Buddha taught the Dharma, he said that first you have to liberate your own mind. You have to find a way to liberate your own mind. So the Buddha said in the beginning, completely tame your own mind. This is the Buddha's teachings. The teachings are a method to find the cause of our suffering. And then these causes need to be eliminated. If you eliminate the cause, the result will naturally not arise. So in this world, the Jambudvipa, the southern continent, the human beings are endowed with a greater level of intelligence and wisdom. And that is why this world is considered to be the most superior world of all the 6 realms in samsara. So in this world, on this continent, we have a precious human body. And the definition of a precious human being is a human being is someone who can understand what is being expressed, and they are able to express themselves with intelligence. So that's a definition of a human being. So human beings in this world are considered the superior when it comes to wisdom or intelligence. Actually also gods are considered superior. And then many human beings turn into spiritual teachers, developing, mastering this quality of wisdom. And so then there are, for example, the gods who, as a result of their merit, they do experience a great level of happiness and bliss, which is why they are considered superior, but still their wisdom is still slightly lesser because of what we call the demon of the son of the gods, the Mara of the son of the gods. They are distracted by their attachment to worldly pleasures. And so in this way, their emotions of attachment and aversion and so on obscure their minds. And in the end, they will continue to wander in samsara and suffer. So what we call the Buddha, is really your own wisdom. And the Buddha's teachings, the precious Buddha's teachings, is a method to eliminate the causes that lead to suffering. And so where can we find these causes? These causes are within our mind. That is why the Buddha said in the beginning, first you must completely tame your own mind. And what's the root of taming your own mind? It is to realize that within the mind there is no division between self and other, no duality. But the mind is like space. That is the ultimate truth of the mind. So when you realize that self and other are not separate, then everything becomes an illusory display to you. All the various appearances, anything that arises, any forms of happiness and suffering and so forth, it all is an illusory play, because you realize that it all is the projection of the mind itself. So it is said, the way things appear is your own mind. Appearance, what the Buddha had realized is that appearances or one's perceptions are one's own mind. And when you realize that, then the various manifestations of pleasure and pain and so on are illusory. They only arise due to a certain cause previously created. And when the cause is prevented, the result cannot arise. So the Dharma, therefore, is a method to prevent these causes from being created, these causes that lead to birth in the 6 realms of samsara. And so we all possess some kind of wisdom to do that. For example, we can see even animals, they have wisdom. And that is their merit. For example, they know how to go on the ground in wintertime when it's cold, and they know how to come back up to the surface in summertime. That is also because of wisdom and intelligence that they have. And even the slightest quality of intelligence is actually a quality of the Buddha. So the way to understand Buddha is to see that Buddha is nothing else but your own wisdom, your own intelligence. And even the slightest happiness comes from that. So if wisdom is slighter, then happiness will be slighter. But basically the happiness that we experience is in direct proportion to the level of wisdom or intelligence that we have developed.
La gente viene normalmente a una sangha gracias al poder de karma previo. Aunque estas personas se ven por afuera igual a los demás, ellos tienen cierta sabiduría. Esta sabiduría es el mérito que tienen. Entonces, la sangha es un lugar donde se junta el mérito de todos estos seres. La mente de sabiduría es el Buda. Hay diferentes niveles de sabiduría. El apego al yo oscurece esta sabiduría. Los que tienen una mente altruista y su mente entonces es más sabia. La mente omnisciente del Buda, lo único que tiene en mente es a todos los demás seres sintientes. Entonces entienden que todos los seres no son diferentes de la propia mente. El Buda dijo, doma completamente tu propia mente. Esa fue su instrucción. Entonces las enseñanzas son un método para encontrar las causas de nuestro sufrimiento. Si eliminamos estas causas, entonces el sufrimiento no surgirá. Este mundo es considerado ser el superior de los 6 reinos del samsara, en donde contamos con un cuerpo precioso humano. Entendemos lo que se dice. Esta es la ventaja que tenemos. Entonces muchos humanos se llegan a convertir en maestros y están desarrollando esta sabiduría. Los dioses tienen felicidad y también es considerado un renacimiento afortunado. Tienen felicidad, tienen bienestar, pero su sabiduría está distraída por su apego a los placeres mundanos. Las emociones de apego y aversión oscurecen su mente. Lo que llamamos el Buda es tu propia sabiduría. ¿En dónde encontramos las causas del sufrimiento? En nuestra propia mente. Entonces, ¿cuál es la raíz de domar la mente? La raíz es que no existe dualidad entre uno y los otros. La mente es como el espacio. Después de que uno llega a realizar esto, todo lo demás se vuelve un despliegue ilusorio. Llegamos a la realización de que todo es una proyección de nuestra mente. El Buda llegó a la realización que las percepciones, todas las percepciones, son nuestra mente. Y cuando llegamos a esta realización, entonces las diferentes manifestaciones como el dolor, el placer, etcétera, son ilusorias. El Dharma es un método para evitar que estas causas sean creadas. Todos tenemos sabiduría, inclusive los animales. Por ejemplo, los animales saben cómo en el invierno ir y pasar todo el invierno bajo suelo. Esto es una demostración de sabiduría. Todas estas cualidades son cualidades del Buda. Entonces, hay que estar conscientes que la más mínima felicidad viene de esta sabiduría que es el Buda.
남도 축걸 템발라 남도 고마마서라 냠냠도 되와지 지도 체데 냠냠도 가리던 거 다들 우리 쇼거도 다들 게 검도로 나고도 다들 통하면서 제르스 거야 용말 제는 통하면 제 쇼거도 가리고 쇼도 다지랑 거 부담 정말 파당마 sabte yapsade kapsuli lantan te rodox te semje yamdox kapti da dox ya ta sabte godox thomas sabte te ramdri semti ba som semti ba jindu te som te semti ba goto gore gomna.
So that's why the Buddha Shakyamuni first said, completely tame your own mind. And so then what's the method? How can we tame our own mind? So because since we have said the mind is like space, what is it that we are taming then, if it's like space? In the 37 Bodhisattva practices, it says, all suffering without exception comes from wishing for one's own happiness. So if I ask you, do you suffer? And then you will say, yes, I do suffer. And where is your suffering? It's in the body. The body and the mind really are unified. And then that verse continues, the perfect Buddhas arise from the altruistic mind. So that shows that even though the body and the mind are in a union, it's really the mind that needs to be tamed. So it's the mind that needs to be purified, not the body. And so what that means is, so who actually creates that body? It's really the mind. It is the self-grasping mind that creates the body. And the self-grasping mind then creates all kinds of bodies. Some are as large as a mountain, and some are as small as atomic particles, dust particles. The self-grasping mind manifests the limitless beings in the three realms of samsara. The three realms are the desire realm, the form realm, and the formless realm. There's beings with a body and beings without a body. And even the beings without a body experience tremendous suffering because they grasp at a self. And so this self is not something that possesses some kind of material substance. It's some kind of made of atomic particles that can be found somewhere. So what is an example? How can we find it? We need to understand the mind. The Buddha said that the mind is just like water, an ocean. And now that's why we can extrapolate from that the self-grasping mind is like an ice block. And when the ice block melts, you attain the state of enlightenment. So what we call the state of enlightenment is like the ocean water, the melted ice. All the ice has melted. And then once the ice melts, it is not separate from the Buddha. So our mind is not essentially separate from the Buddha. The Buddha is together with our mind. That is why the Buddha himself said, all sentient beings are actually Buddhas. That is like saying ice is actually water. We just need to melt the ice block. And how can we melt ice generally? In order to melt ice, we need warmth. And what is the warmth that melts the ice of self-grasping? It is the mind of love. And so with a mind of love, you embark on the path. And so who has taught you that? Who has given you the refuge vow and so on? It is the spiritual teacher. And the Buddha is our guide. And then it is through the Buddha that these spiritual teachers have realized the nature of the mind. So it is the Buddha's teachings. The Buddha's teachings have spread around the world. First, it was the Buddha who had realized it. And probably also it exists in other religions. But in the Buddhist tradition, we have the teacher that is the Buddha Shakyamuni. And the Buddha had said that all sentient beings are really Buddhas. And he described, when he attained enlightenment, he described the nature of the mind. What is that Buddha nature, the nature of the mind? He said it is profound and profoundly peaceful. It is free from any mental elaboration and luminosity and uncompounded. So the mind is just like space. And the Buddha described it into some 4 different ways. So for example, it is luminosity. Luminosity means that you have a knowing potential quality, like a capacity to know. And that by nature is uncompounded and just like space. But it is difficult to realize. Thigten Sumgön said in the 7 verses of Supplication to Taram, even though they see the mind that is so difficult to realize, they do not habituate to it. The reason why we see the mind at all is due to the kindness of the Buddha and the various scriptures and the teachings that we have received. So we have seen the mind, but we do not regard it as something so important, so precious. So you have to change that. You have to see it as something really very precious. I really think this is most important when you think about the suffering of the 6 realms of samsara. There is nothing that's more important than knowing the nature of your own mind. And so therefore, consider it as really most important to melt this ice block of the self and to see the nature of the mind. And for that you need to practice, and that is why you should really consider meditation practice as really most important. From the bottom of your heart, you should think that there is really nothing more important than that. Because when you see the nature of the mind, you are melting the ice block. So that is why it is so important. And so then, however, we need to understand again how we are melting the ice block, so it becomes ocean water. So we need warmth. And the more warmth you have, the more the ice block will melt. And that warmth, as we said, is the altruistic mind. And therefore, if you really want to benefit others, the way to benefit others is to see your own mind. With an altruistic mind, if you want to benefit others, how to accomplish the benefit of yourself and others at the same time is by realizing the nature of your mind. And that is why I consider it as really most important. So first you understand that the mind currently is like ice. And then you understand that in reality, the mind of all beings is empty of self-nature. So, however, it is just an understanding that you have first. So you receive teachings on Mahamudra and Dzogchen and Madhyamaka and so on. You understand that the mind is empty. But that is not sufficient. You have to experience the empty nature of the mind. And therefore, Jetsu Milarepa had said, you must gain the experience of how thoughts naturally dissolve into Dharmakaya. That is meditation. And so then he said, isn't there a disciple who has some experience in meditation? So the point is experience. Meditation means to gain experience. And through experience, you melt that ice block of the self. Otherwise, you might just do some meditation, but really then you are just building that meditation on top of the self, thinking that I am meditating and so on. And so in that way, you will never really see the nature of the mind. You have to actually melt the ice block. And so once you understand how to melt the ice block, then you immediately will remember this when you, for example, think of the love that you have for your children or your husband and wife or your parents and so on. And it is this love, the feeling of love, and that will melt the ice block. And through that you will see that there actually is no self, ultimately. So therefore, in the very beginning, in order to really see the nature of the mind and be able to meditate, you have to cultivate love. You have to really understand the significance of love, the importance of love first. And so that's why we say that meditation really begins on the basis of the mind generation of bodhicitta, the altruistic mind.
Entonces, aquí Rinpoche dice que Buda Shakyamuni, vuelvo a repetir, él dijo que domes tu propia mente. ¿Cuál es el método? Dijimos que la mente es como el espacio. En las 37 prácticas de los bodhisattvas se dice todo el sufrimiento viene de desear el beneficio propio. Los budas perfectos surgen de la mente altruista. Entonces, aunque el cuerpo y la mente están unidos, es la mente la que necesita purificarse, no el cuerpo. La mente, apegada al yo, crea el cuerpo. Crea algunos cuerpos grandes como montañas y otros tan chicos como partículas subatómicas. La mente manifiesta los diferentes seres de los 3 reinos. ¿Cuáles son estos 3 reinos? El reino del deseo, el reino con forma y el reino sin forma. Entonces, aunque llega a haber seres con forma, con cuerpo o sin forma, sin cuerpo, aún estos seres sin cuerpo llegan a experimentar gran sufrimiento. Entonces, ahí nos damos cuenta que el yo no tiene una sustancia material. Entonces, tenemos que entender la mente. La mente es como agua, es como un océano. Por eso, extrapolamos que la mente aferrada al yo es como un bloque de hielo, que al derretirse adquiere el estado de iluminación, el estado de agua de un océano. Nuestra mente no está separada del Buda. El Buda dijo que todos los seres actualmente son Budas, tienen la naturaleza búdica. Es como decir que todo el hielo es agua. Entonces, para derretir este hielo, necesitamos el calor. ¿Cuál es este calor? Es la mente con amor compasivo. ¿Quién nos da el voto de refugio? Es el maestro espiritual. Entonces, el Buda es nuestro guía y a través de estos maestros espirituales es como difunde su conocimiento. El Buda, cuando se iluminó, describió la naturaleza búdica como profundamente pacífica, libre de elaboraciones mentales, luminosa y clara. Entonces, la mente es como el espacio, es luminosidad. Es luminosidad porque tienes un potencial de saber y esto no está compuesto. Jigten Sumgon dijo que en una plegaria de Jigten Sumgon dice, aunque ven su mente y la realizan, no se habitúan a ella. Entonces, aunque hemos visto la mente, pero no la consideramos algo precioso, tenemos que cambiar esto y pensar que esto es lo más importante. No hay algo más importante que conocer la naturaleza de nuestra mente. Para esto hay que practicar y hay que considerar la práctica de la meditación como muy importante. Cuando ves la naturaleza de la mente, estás derritiendo el bloque de hielo que se convierte en el océano. El calor es la mente altruista. Si quieres beneficiar a otros, el mejor método es ver la naturaleza de tu propia mente. Y considerando esto, lo más importante. La mente de todos los seres es vacua y no tiene naturaleza propia. Hay que experimentar esta naturaleza vacua de la mente. Milarepa dijo, hay que ver cómo se funden los pensamientos en el Dharmakaya. Entonces la meditación es ganar esta experiencia y a través de ella se va derritiendo el bloque de hielo, que es el yo, el apego al yo. Una vez que entiendes cómo derretir el hielo, inmediatamente pensarás en el amor que sientes por otros, por ejemplo, por tus hijos, por tu pareja, por tu familia. Este es el principio que hay que cultivar, el amor, entender la importancia del amor. Entonces decimos que la meditación se basa principalmente en la mente altruista de la bodhicitta.
So 차는 돌았더라. 내게 사바도 깨도 들이 돌람 탑치들이 냐미 되들 사바세미 되들이 다 초와들 오 삼바다 단디니 뭐 사바리도 삼바라 티비 hin게 되게 단지랑 피바래 별로 맞아. 이게 뜻벌들이 이게 기반도 차성면은 오 제가 좀에 메도 때라서 가는 이제 이게 삼바단 말이에요. 이게 이게랑 티바성 데이터 필요를 내가 수는 무절을 적어야 돼. 타톡사지에서 고마워 배우면 그때 공자만 담지 삼바세미데 공이 될 때는 이제 뒤에서 뭐 송될 때는 로르도 맞아서 냠들 때 딱지 땅나 들이지 다들 지식을 삼바를 때는 하작게 좀 삼바세미 이제 손을 다 sem지 당내 만나 받아야 버리 septiembre de donde lo guarda calino se 초를 좀 맞을 쪽에서 다 들려요. 다 고만냐면 오 당연히 사바고는 이게 동에 초래거든. 무슨 랩송이 까때디 이게 동에 초와 되게 다른 거 동에 다 다른 식도 거요. 사바데 이게 막다 차들. 사바 sem지는 걸로 잡아 사바다가 또 선상 보조가 뭐라는 정도 딜러들이 마음 하다냐면 문제를 새끼 하고는 다 주야요만 단천도 그래. 다 나한테 같이 생기게 잡으니까 내가 잡잖아. 진짜 너게 됐잖아. 참 나한테 이거지 갑자기 자기도 했잖아. 우리 거기 요래 따요 말이지. 생문대로 또 생기 맞았다 돼. 이게 말이야. 주지만 통준이 통송. 그렇지 답증이 이제 봤다고 나는 만지인 데게 되는 줄 만지인들 쳐봤을래. 이제만 머리 때때 삼았던 것들이 돌아 나한테 봐봐. 다 동태 마보상으로 단 거면 사바세미 때라 어쩌냐. 이 사바세미 때니 사바 오 때리 봐. 고스를 딜레로 때라. 동물들이 정말 생기 ninji 열고 메이송을 해. 우리 생기 맞아 말이. 다진이 맞아도 세지 가도 저요 말이 대는들이 말하리베 주지 막도 주니 통들 호텔이야 또 많이 통소 얘는 뒤들이 남시 막통이 시도도 다시 시바사 오지 다 통소 다진이 매베들이 시바들이 다진이 매바 대리 얘네 요거 예시서 탐제시베 시사 다다다 따르면 내용나 그렇게 까불들이 문에들랑 다 좋다 다에 다 좋고 깔리 그 공장들 아버지 뒤들 내는 거래 람 그때 호텔 배배 돼야지 다 되고 가디를 대하면서 그 대화치 뭐송 뒤들을 내면 그 공장들 다 통통 가실래고 요래 그 사바체미티 저도 조랑 탑재하고 곰 뒤토 땅에 공까지 이런 거 사바체미티 곰나 들이 딱 내들 곰라지 봐지 다들 냠냠다죠. 고때 때때 고려하고 그러지.
And Milarepa had said, the meditation must be to realize that there is no difference between the daytime waking state mind and the dream state, then you have perfected meditation. So actually our dream state and the waking state mind are one and the same. There's not the slightest difference between daytime and the dream time. And so now we think that the waking state, the daytime perceptions, that's the real life, that's the reality. And we believe that because we have a body. And due to that, we see duality between ourselves and others. And actually, it is empty just like a dream. In a dream, also, actually, we wander around and in our dream world, and what is actually going around and experiencing, the one who experiences the world, is actually the self-grasping mind. It's the me, it's the I that experiences everything. So it's the I to which the various experiences arise. Jamgyal Kongtrul also had said that it's this I, and that whereby we instantly develop feelings of joy and sadness and so forth. The moment it becomes triggered, and so sentient beings therefore experience an unbearable, overwhelming of feelings. And so, for example, when somebody says something, also then he said, and I feel great compassion for these destitute sentient beings. And so, for example, when someone says something really harsh, immediately a feeling arises in our mind, doesn't it? So who is the one experiencing that feeling of upset? It's that self, it's the me, I am experiencing it. And until that has been eliminated, there is no liberation from the 6 realms of samsara. So then where is this me? So the me or the I, the self, they are one and the same. So if you want to tame it, you have to understand the empty nature of the mind. So you have to realize that ice is water. And there is no benefit in just knowing that. You have to actually experience it. If you don't experience it, the intellectual understanding alone will not suffice. And so that's why I say that our meditation has to be based on love, loving kindness. And that's why the Buddhas act for the benefit of sentient beings. So from love, or the compassion that we arise for sentient beings has to be based on this immeasurable love. If it's not based on immeasurable love, then it is ordinary compassion and not altruistic compassion, the compassion that the Buddhists had for sentient beings. So, for example, we do have great compassion for those near us, like our parents and our friends, our dogs and cats and so on. We feel great compassion for them, but it is limited because it is a samsaric, an ordinary compassion, because it is connected to the self. It is because we cling to them, we are attached to them, that we feel compassion for them. So it's that me, that self, that has to become liberated. And so therefore, in order to liberate it, in order to really be able to cultivate true compassion, we first need to cultivate immeasurable love. And that has to be an actual feeling arising in the mind. You need to feel love for all. And so Thigden Somgen also said, cause and effect is the natural manifestation of one's moment-to-moment thoughts. So right now in this world, there's animals and humans coexisting. So therefore, we analyze on the observing animals and humans. So this is how I myself have analyzed. And I'm actually, there's no one that has greater anger than me. I have a lot of experience. And I reflect that by looking at animals. And I wondered, now what's the difference between us? For example, a snake and so on, or any other animal. What's the difference between them and me? There's really no difference when it comes to the mind. When I observe them, the mind is one and the same. Because they all want to be happy and don't want to suffer, and they all basically do the same things. It is just that our merit is different, and that's why temporarily I have a precious human body, because I have a greater amount of merit temporarily. Due to a slight virtue I have committed, I now experience more happiness. But in the end, our mind is really one and the same. It is just that one has a greater amount of afflictive emotions. For example, when I look in the animal realm, there are some animals where the mother would even eat her own child, where basically even partners eat each other. Like, when they're mating or so, partners, they eat each other. And that is a natural manifestation of hatred, of anger. And then there is other animals that have a lot of love and compassion. Some even have more compassion than human beings. They protect their children and take them everywhere with them. And not only that, there is some animals who protect thousands of their own kind. So these are just animals. But also it is said that within animals, the Buddha also appears. So in terms of being animals, for example, they are the same, but their mind is different. And that is why you should recognize love is really most important. Now, when you see, for example, a suffering animal, then reflect and think, will I be born as such an animal? Really think about it. When you look at your mind and you find that there is a lot of anger and jealousy in the mind, especially jealousy, then you can know with 100% certainty that you will be born in one of those inferior states. Even if you are a king or a high minister, you will be born as an animal. So the main affliction leading to the animal realm is ignorance. And that, for example, is denying of karma, cause and effect. And so if ignorance is strong in the mind, then for sure you have the seed of taking birth as an animal. And then once you're born as this kind of animal, will you be able to bear that kind of suffering? It will be very difficult. So therefore, really think about it and cultivate love, immeasurable love. And even when a small moment of love arises, grasp that feeling of love, recognize it. So Jigten Sumgön had also said we begin by cultivating love with those around us, our parents, our relatives and friends and so on, whoever you love the most. Like, for example, if you love your parents the most, then think that there is not a single sentient being who has not been my parent. And then all these parents, all these sentient beings have the same mind fundamentally. There's no difference at all. And ultimately, self and other actually are inseparable. We are not dual. So the mind stream, this mental continuum of all those sentient beings in the 6 realms who are my parents, and my own mind stream is one and the same mind stream. So this is how you cultivate love for all of them. When you, for example, love your own parents, then think in this way. Think all of them have been my parents, or whoever you love. And when love arises, see the feeling of love. And then imagine, for example, if you love your mother, imagine that, how would I feel if somebody comes and would kill my mother? So then think that all sentient beings have been just like that, and they suffer just like that. Even the smallest little animal that you see their suffering, recognize their suffering. That's why the Buddha first said, in the very beginning, first you have to recognize suffering, and then you have to abandon the origin of suffering. But if you first do not really recognize suffering, you will not want to really abandon the origins of suffering. For example, nowadays there's a lot of people who feel no need for the Dharma, any religion. They feel quite happy and content in their lives and feel that, no, if I have the Dharma, it's fine. If not, it's fine. Actually, most people even think that religion is just trouble, and they don't even want anything to do with it. But then once that merit comes to an end, as the 5 afflictive emotions continue to increase, they will only experience the 3 lower realms of samsara over and over again. So when you see that love is most important and compassion is most important, even if it's just a small animal, think in this way. In all your activities, when you go around, whatever you do, whoever you see, bring this to mind, bring their suffering to mind. Think about their suffering and cultivate love. And remember, in all your activities, the antidote to my suffering, the antidote to self-grasping is immeasurable love. That is really the only thing that will benefit you. And then from this love arises true, genuine compassion. If compassion does not arise from this kind of love, immeasurable love, then it's not so beneficial. It's more related to attachment, personal attachments, like our family members, or cats and dogs, or flowers, and so forth. So the compassion must be infused by love. So it must be arise out of love, and then it will not be ordinary. And the ordinary compassion, of course, also is of some benefit, but it's only short-lived, and it will not lead to ultimate enlightenment. So therefore, cultivate love. Immeasurable love is love for all. And practice it according to how Trikden Sumgana taught. When you think about someone that you love very much, and then think that all the beings in the 6 realms have been like that. And so since in this world humans and animals coexist, you can really look at humans and animals and analyze that. And on the basis of that, cultivate immeasurable love. That really is the foundation. That's how you plant the foundation of cultivating love for all mother sentient beings. For example, when that really becomes habituated and you hear about a certain country having some difficulties, and immediately a genuine, uncontrived feeling of compassion arises for them. And that's because of the experience. You experience the feeling. So if true love arises, then true compassion will arise from that. And it arises when you really see the suffering of others, when it comes to you, when you feel their suffering. And actually, when you think about the suffering of others, actually it helps in eliminating your own suffering. So compassion is just like the sun. And if you have immeasurable love and compassion, that is actually what will pervade all beings. It is said in the prayer for excellent conduct, the King of Aspiration prayers, the power that pervades all sentient beings is the power of love. And so when you think in this way, when you really reflect on that, you should feel that all beings really have been my mothers. And of course, if I think about them in terms of how many are there, there is no end to it. There's no way we can really determine how many beings there are. It is said that there are as many beings as far as space pervades, there are sentient beings. And as far as sentient beings pervade, there is karma and suffering. So think about their suffering and think that they all have been my mother. Have they been my mother or not? And so in this way, you reflect. And then eventually, then you reflect. So all these beings who suffer, are they real? Are they real sentient beings? And then you think they are not really sentient beings. Ultimately, when you see the nature of the mind, you see that ultimately, real sentient beings do not actually inherently exist. That's why Milarepa had said, I do not see phenomena, I see the nature of phenomena. That is, when you see the nature of the mind, you see that all appearances and all the sentient beings are illusory appearances, only temporarily, because beings are confused by self-grasping. Manifold appearances appear, but they are just like a dream, nothing but a dream. It is because of this eye that various things appear. So when you think in this way, you come to the ultimate truth, that ultimately all these beings do not actually exist. And then your compassion, your immeasurable love becomes truly vast and all-pervasive. And so until then, you have to make the greatest effort to cultivate immeasurable love. There's nothing that's more important than that. And then as a result of that, when you see the nature of the mind, as it is said in a text, you realize that no real objects of compassion exist. Those objects of compassion, the sentient beings, lack inherent existence because you realize that self and other do not really exist. So that's why Milarepa said, I do not see phenomena, I only see the dharmata, the nature of phenomena. What he saw is the empty nature of samsara and nirvana. And still, even though he only saw the true nature of phenomena, then he said, I do not see consciousness, I only see primordial wisdom. So this consciousness, there is still a clear knowing awareness. Even though things lack inherent existence, he sees the empty nature, there still is a clear knowing awareness. But it is non-dual, a non-dual awareness. A non-dual awareness is what we call this primordial wisdom. It's primordial because it has been there since primordial times, and wisdom because it is an all-knowing awareness. So when you abide within this awareness, what we call it the view, you will come to a conclusion. You will be certain that this is the nature of the mind. And then meditation just happens naturally. Sometimes when you meditate, you just, for a flash of a moment, you just instantly come to this state. And this state is a state of great bliss. It's your true nature is unchanging bliss. It is always blissful. We call that the greatly blissful Dharmakaya. So right now, we do come to this state for short periods of time when we meditate. And not the way to really gain stability in it is to have this meditation be based on immeasurable love. So therefore, cultivate immeasurable love in all of your activities, in whatever you do. If immeasurable love arises, it is then through immeasurable love that your meditation will actually become an experience.
Ahora, Milarepa dice que la meditación debe de ser realizar que no hay diferencia entre la mente del estado de vigía y la mente del dormir. No hay diferencia entre el día y el sueño. Creemos esto porque tenemos un cuerpo y vemos una dualidad entre otros y nosotros. Por ejemplo, en un sueño, vagamos en este mundo ilusorio del sueño y lo que experimentamos y todo los seres que vemos se dan por un aferramiento al yo. Dice Jamjon Kontru que nosotros desarrollamos sentimientos de felicidad y tristeza por este aferramiento al yo. Por ejemplo, cuando alguien nos dice algo malo, surge un sentimiento de molestia. El que lo experimenta es el yo. Entonces, mientras no eliminemos este aferramiento al yo, experimentaremos los 6 reinos. Si quieres eliminar este yo, hay que entender la naturaleza de la mente. No sirve un entendimiento nada más intelectual por medio de leer libros o recibir enseñanzas. Hay que experimentar. Nuestra meditación debe de estar basada en el amor bondadoso. La compasión debe de estar basada en un amor inconmensurable. Si no, entonces es una compasión ordinaria. Tenemos gran compasión por los que están cerca de nosotros, pero está limitada. ¿Por qué está limitada? Porque al final es un apego a ellos. Para cultivar la compasión verdadera, hay que cultivar el amor inconmensurable. Por ejemplo, nosotros observamos la diferencia entre animales y humanos. Por ejemplo, dice Rinpoche que hay unos que tienen mucha ira. ¿Cuál es la diferencia entre ellos y yo? No hay diferencia real en la mente. Todos al final quieren ser felices y no sufrir. Pero por nuestros diferentes méritos tenemos diferentes existencias.
Special insight. So that's how we really meditate. So first, the meditation is preceded by the mind generation and motivation of bodhicitta. And once you have cultivated the motivation, then you look at your mind. Mind looks at mind. As it is said in the Ganges Mahamudra text, when mind looks at mind, the multitude of thoughts will naturally cease. So when mind looks at mind, what do you really seeing, what you're looking at? When you see what you need to see, you're looking at your consciousness. So you need to see the essence, the nature of your consciousness. When you look at your consciousness, then thoughts will stop. And when thoughts stop, then your experience of a space-like nature of mind naturally arises. And then you experience that when I have no thoughts, I'm very blissful. So Milarepa had said, within bliss you find emptiness. So you experience the thought-free mind, and there is great bliss. And then so how you find emptiness in the bliss is that, so you realize that when I have no thoughts, I feel so happy, I'm so blissful. And this lack of thought, this realization that it's because of this lack of thought is the finding of emptiness in bliss. So basically it means finding the emptiness within bliss is that you realize the bliss is due to there not being any thought. So then within this emptiness, Milarepa said, within emptiness you find clarity. So the emptiness, we have said, is the absence of thoughts, and you have gained an experience of great bliss due to that. So you have this experience, I'm so happy, so joyful. Within emptiness you find clarity. So the one who is feeling so joyful, that's the clarity. You are aware of your joyful nature. So that's the clarity. And then within clarity you find Rigpa, which is the intrinsic awareness. And that is really what you need to sustain. It is the Rigpa awareness. That needs to be sustained at all times. So when we meditate, this is how we progress. As Milarepa had said, within bliss you find emptiness, within emptiness you find clarity, within clarity you find this Rigpa awareness. In the Dzogchen teachings, for example, it always mentions this term Rigpa. And then that Rigpa has to be sustained in all your day-to-day activities. And this is what is meant by saying sustaining your mindfulness, your clear awareness must be held with stability. The meaning of that is to sustain Rigpa. On the 37 practices, it says, in brief, in whatever you do, look at the state of your mind. It's your mindfulness. Or in the 7 verses of supplication to Tara, it says, I supplicate to the mother goddess of mindfulness. So this mindfulness and Rigpa and primordial wisdom, they have the same essence. Primordial wisdom is the awareness that sees the non-dual nature. And it sees that, it knows that it is like space. It is always there throughout all times. Space can never cease to be. So that's what Milarepa meant with, I do not see consciousness, I just see primordial wisdom. So when I look at consciousness, I see primordial wisdom. Primordial wisdom is like space. It can never cease to be, and it will always be there, and it's there now. It is primordial, a timeless awareness. So always stay within that. If you always sustain that awareness, you will realize, you can realize everything. You can realize all the nature of all phenomena of samsara and nirvana. So meditate in this way. So you find emptiness in bliss, clarity in emptiness, and Rigpa in clarity.
Entonces, se da la generación de bodhicitta. Entonces, luego la mente ve a la mente. En el Mahamudra de Ganges se dice, cuando la mente ve a la mente, entonces los pensamientos se disuelven. Entonces necesitamos ver la naturaleza de la conciencia. Entonces así paran tus pensamientos y surge la experiencia cuál va a cuidar.
You don't think of I and a self, and you also don't think of other. You just don't think of anything, and you look decisively. As it is said, without a single thought, decisively look at your true nature. And when you look at your true nature, it will become empty naturally, devoid of self and other. And that is what we call emptiness. That's the ultimate emptiness. It's the absence of any thought. There's no thought, no dualistic thought of self and other. And that thought-free, non-dual mind is what needs to be recognized.
Entonces, Milarepa dice que el gozo se encuentra en, primero tenemos esta experiencia de gozo y en este gozo encontramos la vacuidad. Entonces realizamos que cuando no tenemos pensamiento, tenemos un gozo. Este descubrimiento se da de que por la vacuidad encontramos la claridad. Esta experiencia te da felicidad. En la vacuidad encontramos la claridad y esta experiencia te da una felicidad. Esta claridad que encontramos es lo que se define como Rigpa, que es la conciencia intrínseca. En el Dzogchen se habla del Rigpa, que debe de ser mantenido a lo largo de todas las actividades. Mantener tu conciencia clara, esto es Rigpa. Entonces, hagas lo que hagas, estarás viendo el estado de tu mente. Al final dice Rinpoche que no pienses en un yo. Dice que sin pensamiento, entonces verás la naturaleza de tu mente. Esto es la última vacuidad, la ausencia del pensamiento dualista, y esto es lo que hay que reconocerse. Entonces ahora comenzamos la meditación guiada por Rinpoche en base a todo lo que ahorita nos estuvo diciendo.
home. The goblet dog got a home. 장도는 주도하는지 이라는 독지 정권에 대학장 비용 지보를 대다다다는 참작이
So when you meditate, meditate on your consciousness as the home. And the Buddha said in the Great Liberation Sutra that it is of greater benefit to spend a session in meditation than it is to save the lives of all sentient beings in the 3 realms of samsara. And that is because when you meditate, your mind pervades all sentient beings in the 3 realms. And it is just like through the power of your meditation, you're bringing warmth into this ocean with the ice blocks on it and makes the ice blocks melt. So therefore, meditation is really of the greatest benefit. So then we will stop here.
We'll finish with long life prayers in the yellow prayer book on page 22.
Vamos a terminar con plegarias
For
de
this
larga
realm,
vida, página 22.
steadfast until the end of samsara, embodiment of the 3 jewels, great being who upholds and increases the teachings of the Shakya lion. Supreme are your activities of guiding others with your perfect deeds. May you, the precious Guru who accomplishes everything spontaneously, live long. Holder of the teachings of the Lord Drigumpa, great Lord of the 3 jewels, through the power of your peerless compassion and the holy Dharma's peace and light, you bring relief to beings. May your life be long. The one
Página
known in the
25.
noble land as Arya Deva emanated into the Gar clan of eastern Tibet as Chudingpa, the heart son of Jigden Gompo. May the life of the glorious Garchen remain steadfast for 100 eons. Page 28.
Página 28.
Teachings of the great Drigumpa Ratna Shri, Master of Interdependence, Omniscient Lord of Dharma, who has seen all knowable things, be upheld until the end of cyclic existence through study, practice, hearing, contemplation, and meditation. Your 1,000 arms are the 1,000 wheel-turning kings. Your 1,000 eyes are the 1,000 Buddhas of this fortunate eon. Your love is boundless like space. I supplicate to the Bodhisattva Chenrezig.
Buddha said, offer 1 katak to each of you.
Rinpoche acaba de decir que nos ofrece una cata a cada uno de nosotros. Por favor, todavía no se vayan. Ahorita les acabo de traducir las últimas instrucciones que dio Rinpoche y les doy algunos anuncios. Bueno, lo que dijo Rinpoche acabando la meditación es que nos sugirió meditar en nuestra atención, como nuestra conciencia, como el hum. Dijo que el Buda dijo que es más beneficioso una sesión de meditación que el salvar a todos los seres de los tres reinos. Cuando meditamos, traemos ese calor del que estuvimos hablando, el calor de la bodhicitta. Y este calor es el que finalmente va a derretir el hielo del apego al yo. Entonces, les queremos dar las gracias por haber participado en esta enseñanza y meditación. La traducción fue a cargo de Grupo Amigos Rico. El traductor fue Leonardo Álvarez. Y si quieren hacer algún donativo para Garchen Rinpoche y el Instituto Budista Garchen, por favor, refiéranse a la información que publicamos en español, en Facebook y también por email. Ahí está el link para hacer los donativos, tanto a Garchen Rinpoche como al Centro Budista Garchen. Entonces, también les sugerimos que le den like a nuestra página en Facebook, también a nuestra página de YouTube, Grupo Amigos Drikung, es como la pueden buscar. El próximo evento que vamos a traducir va a ser a la misma hora, el próximo sábado, agosto 21, donde Garchen Rinpoche va a dar enseñanzas sobre el arte de la transformación interna y los puntos claves para la felicidad temporal y la felicidad última. Si tienen alguna pregunta o si tienen alguna idea, alguna sugerencia, por favor escríbanos en nuestra página de Facebook de Grupos Amigos Rico. Gracias y que tengan feliz fin de semana.